In this part of our photography review show, we're going to be looking at photographers who focus on travel photography, and then the rest of the photographers who really cover a mix of different photography styles. Hello everyone, my name is Jacob Bors, I'm from Clever Photographer, and I'm here to do your weekly review show. We're super excited because after last week's we received lots of entries, and that's the reason really why we decided to first of all divide the entries between 3 different parts of the show. So in this part we're going to be focusing at travel and mixed photography. And also what we had to do, unfortunately we had to actually limit the entry to 2 photos. So if you have sent more than 2 photos, I went through all of them, I picked 2 of my favorites, and that's the one I'm going to be looking at throughout this show. For everyone who don't know me, I'm a professional photographer. I'm based in the south of England in UK, in an area called West Sussex, and I've been in digital media and photography for over 15 years. I have 3 photography businesses, and my photos and my photography prints are pretty much all over the world, everywhere from United States to Australia, and I'm a full-time photographer. I make my living out of it, and for the past few years I've been reviewing photos for my photography colleagues, and now we have decided with Clever Photographer that it's something we want to try to do for our community here, as we have lots of people who are interested in this. So we're gonna start straight from here. So this is our week number 2. If you want to join us, make sure that you keep an eye on our Facebook page, Clever Photographer, and also make sure that you visit our website, cleverphotographer.com, scroll all the way down and sign up to our newsletter, so you make sure that you get our weekly reminders and all the information about how you can participate in this part of our photographer community. So without any further ado, let's jump straight to it, where we're gonna start and look at the travel photographers and photographers with a mixed style of photography. And here we are back in the Lightroom. We have around 10 photographers in front of us. Just as usual, we're gonna be looking at the technical part of the photo, how you handle your camera. We're gonna be talking about the artistic feel and message and all about the composition and that part of your photography. And we're gonna be ending it up on looking at your post-processing, the photo editing, and maybe giving you some tips of what we would do differently and how we can look at it. So first we're gonna start with the travel photography, and we're gonna start with Amy Lynn. So we have 3 pictures from her, 1, 2, 3. I'm assuming this one and this one are pretty much from a similar location, and then this one just from somewhere else. A really kind of travel photography feel. I hope you agree with me. Out of the 3, this one is my favorite, because really the use of the sun and the contrast works really well here, but all 3 of them are pretty well. I just think that when you have a subject like this with all the beautiful color and contrast created by the color, it's a shame to turn it in a black and white. I get where you're coming from. Obviously some pictures are better than the other ones, and sometimes we're keen to kind of turn it in black and white, but I personally prefer not to run to the black and white to kind of when I run out of ideas, I just try different things. What you could do is maybe like a selective color effect and stuff like that, but either way we're gonna look at them. So obviously, starting about the technical point of view, everything seems to be in sharp and in detail, so that's great. Let's have a look at some of the information. Obviously, you're using Canon as your camera. You have a lovely lens, 18-55. I would be quite interested why you were using f20 in this situation, as obviously the sun is there. Quite often when the sun is there like this, we don't need to use such a high ISO, such a high f-stop. I get when we use little higher f-stop to create the kind of star effect, but really that happens anytime after f11 and up. So f20 is kind of push, but it's your choice. Let's have a look at this one, f8. Yep, perfect. And we don't have really details for this one, but anyway, it's all sharp. The exposure is well. It would be interesting to see the raw file and see how much actually data is inside of the sun, meaning how did you capture it if it's not burned out, but I can't really say it from this photo right here. Then talking about natural light, it's lovely. This time of the day, it's great. It's a good choice and it's a lovely photo. Same here, obviously everything is sharp right here, really nicely sharp actually. you're using natural light. This is a different time of the day, but because there is no sun on this picture and it's hitting these kind of elements, it actually works quite well in this case because it creates additional contrast, not just kind of black and white, but additional contrast from the sunlight. So well done there. And here it's the contrast is more created by the kind of dodge and burn effect here, but still nicely sharp and everything is there. Moving on the artistic feel, I already talked about the composition and the whole idea. I really like this one because of the sun. Obviously, the light rays create kind of leading lines, and the text again leading towards the sun. So it's lovely. This is a lovely example of travel photo, which totally can go on your social media website, and it works very well. So great there. I think the crop works very well. Too, I think it's good that the sky has some details in it, some kind of texture, because if it would be just blue, I think it would be shame. Here, so looking at the picture, obviously these elements are lovely, creating great contrast with the blue. Little bit of a shame for the foreground element. First, because it's cropped away, so you can't really see the base, so it's a bit confusing. Second, because it's kind of high texture, high volume texture, foreground elements. So once you start to go into these kind of really kind of trees and grasses and everything, it takes lots of attention away. I think if you would have kind of removed them or step closer and maybe use wider lens or make little panel, it would be a little bit nicer, and then this would be your kind of foreground. In this case, foreground is here and it's a bit confusing, also nowhere near as interested as your middle ground and the background. So that's maybe just one thing I would add to it. Totally understand that it's probably impossible to have it without people, but if there wouldn't be there, it would be even better, just for next time. But other than that, great. Talking about this one again, clear message, lovely travel photo. Maybe just a shame that there is this bit which is a bit confusing. Me personally, I prefer to remove any parts which send the wrong message to the brain, so they just kind of there and the person doesn't know what it is. Leftover trees, branches, just make your message as clear as possible. Either kind of crop it away or try to Photoshop it away, or do the step away when you're there with the camera to see if you could kind of capture it without. Just my personal thing. Finally, moving on to post-processing. Here again, just not sure how much detail is there in the sun. You will know by yourself. It looks touched burnout, but maybe it isn't. Wondering if you were capturing it like a HDR, you know, and try to get the most detail out of it. That's probably the only thing I would say. Other than that, the colors are natural. It's all sharp. It looks good. There is a good contrast to it. I like this picture. The second one, I'm wondering if this is like a gradient. If it is, I would just do it a little bit longer. In fact, what I would do, I would crop it completely away. Maybe something, let's switch this off. Maybe something like this, you know, to really kind of make it panoramic, and that way we lose that much of the space which doesn't add anything to the photo. I know there are like two clouds here, but really your main subject is here, and when I look at it and my first eyes goes on the top and go on the white part up there, simply because that's how human eyes built. It goes to the brightest part of the photo first. So personally, I would cut it off, made it lovely panorama, and it's even cooler message. Like this one on the top of a website or a Facebook page would work really well. So that's the difference I would do. Other than that, the highlights are well, the colors are natural, just well done. This one, black and white, yeah, lovely natural black and white, just enough contrast for me. Like we were saying, you know, you could do some kind of cropping just to see if maybe there is a way to work around. Depends, you know, I mean, this is, to me, is just a little bit clearer, but you know, you can push your images as much as you want. It's really up to you. I will not touch into that. Out of the three, again, the black and white work on certain things. I think when you have such a lovely scene with so much color contrast, I would just stay away from it. But other than that, well done, Amy. Thank you so much for joining us. And if you have a time, join us next time. We would love to see more of your work. Take care. Until then, bye-bye. Next photographer, Manfred. We got this over Facebook. I will not go in depth here because really there is a lovely idea to the photo, but this part completely burned, no details in it. It seems more like it was captured on the way somewhere on a phone. It's like a snapshot, lovely snapshot, you know, on the way to work or whatever. If you capture this, it's lovely. But I think as a photographer, for photography, you would want to do much more, you know. Obviously, there is a lot happening with the lens blur and with the kind of highlights. Looking at the editing and looking at the whites, there are parts which are completely burned down. So just would do more. And what would help me for next time, Manfred, is if you could send such a picture in raw file, so I could see more, I could see information about how you capture it, I could see about what you done with it in post-processing, and that will allow me with picture like this to give you more advice and more feedback. So anyway, thank you very much. I hope to see you next time and send us more picture, preferably through Dropbox. Next, we have a Rajesh, and I have a few pictures from him, and simply because I completely get where he's going, I'm just judging that that's probably some kind of travel photography, but probably like a holidays or time away with the family or friends. And I have to be honest, it's not there yet. In overall, there is some kind of sky replacement or something. There is a halo around the person. This almost seems like it was captured from the car because the foreground is blurry and suddenly the background is sharp. Then there is this picture where I think there is a sky replacement use and it doesn't really match the feel, but let's quickly have a look at it. Talking from the technical part, yeah, just depending what you're trying to do. Obviously not the best framing because the person is away, although I try to see what you're trying to do. The sun looks definitely burnt out to me, so when I go here you can see everything what is white, green, any other color than black is burned out, so there is not much detail in the actual sun, and you can see it when I push the highlights. But the person is sharp-ish, and the background is sharpish. Again, just not enough there to tell me what you were trying to do. But that's from the technical part. The light is a bit poor, it's a bit harsh, it's the wrong time of the day. And yeah, moving on the next one, it looks like you've done some sky replacement, but anyway, out of the 4 or out of the ones I choose, this is probably the best one. It just seems like there is kind of halo around the person, but at least the person is all in focus. You know, shame for the background that it's maybe there is no bigger separation. Also the daylight or whatever time of the day it is isn't 100% clear. There is some kind of dodge and burn on the face which is really visible, so shame for there. Here again, as I say, although you try to do something, I think your foreground is out of focus, and although sometimes this technique is used, it doesn't really work here. On the final one, again I say the sky, you kind of almost have a like a long exposure sky, and next to it you have a pretty sharp sea, so the kind of human eye gets a bit confused there. So I'm already talking about the artistic part, you know, this is like your family thing. What I would really suggest you to do if you want to do travel photos and so on is to go even on a websites like Unsplash, which is completely free website, and just search like a travel photography and get inspired from what people do there and try to kind of repeat it. And while you're repeating that and while you find pictures you like, you will see that you will start to create your own style. But unfortunately this is still far from like a full-time photography. I know where you're going, I think the idea is there, but now what you need to do is to try to get inspired by other photographers. But anyways, thank you very much for joining us for this. I really appreciate that you took the time to send us pictures, and go on and see what's out there and try to copy it and try to learn from that, especially when it comes to composition. Next person we moving on is called Mary McKenna. We got 2 pictures from you, black and white, and then this lady in the sea. Technical part. So starting from here, it seems to be the exposure isn't really perfect. It seems to be very dark, which probably is to do with the fact that you are trying to capture the kind of movement. Let's see if we have any information. Yeah, you're using Nikon D 7000, and it was 1/60 of a second, which is probably the right number to still shoot handheld and get some of the details, although there is some of the movement already used by the kind of slower exposure. So with this darkness, it's really difficult for me to say what's in the focus, what's not in the focus. It seems to be really dark, and there is a lot of details in the sun, which I really like, but overall it's just a little bit in balance for me. Moving on the black and white, I mean, that is much better. Obviously everything is sharp here, including the kind of foreground grass here, the car and everything, so well done on that. The exposure seems to be good for me. Obviously natural light. Shame we don't have a raw file, we could say a little bit more, but well done on that. It's looking a little bit more advanced when it comes to technique than the first one. Moving on artistic part, this is the kind of picture which we love when in the location, and it happens to all of us as a photographers. We're standing at certain point, there is either a woman like this, or there is a lovely rock or mountain and everything, and quite sometimes it looks so much better there than when we get home and we try to do the post-processing. A little bit similar like the bottle of wine you have when you're away for the holidays and you feel like it's the best one you ever had, and then when you come home with a case of it, it's just pretty average. So similar with the picture, obviously a great idea, but it's kind of missing the whole part. You don't really know what's happening because it's so dark. You can't say what is this. I think there is a lots of dark details in sky, which makes me either think that it was kind of later in the evening, so almost like a blue hour, which is really difficult to shoot with this speed of your camera. So few things you need to kind of work on, but the idea is there, and I completely get why you capture it and why you like the photo. It's just it's a bit more difficult and trickier to translate it into the picture. I think the sky is lovely. There's lovely details there. There's lovely sunset, so well done on that. Moving here, I think everything right here is fine, and then you get this just white part. And when you are a photographer or when you are a person looking at the picture, the first thing the eye is gonna go inside here. So I don't know what you could have done differently. Obviously you can look at something like a sky replacement and try to put something there. That would maybe work. Try to see if like a simple gradient would at least close it a little bit, something like this, you know, to kind of get at least the gradient as a little bit of texture. That's another thing, and just kind of see, maybe come back to the location and see if the picture would work better. I think the crop, there is nothing wrong with it. Personally, I would prefer the car or something like that being the foreground rather than the grass, but in general, I like it. It's better than the first one. In overall, the post-processing, yeah, this is very nicely balanced and natural black and white photo with lovely contrast, and for that being probably some kind of daylight midday situation, judging based on the harsh shadows, it's still very well edited, and I don't have much to say. Second one here, as I say, maybe because of the way and how it was compressed, it's a bit too dark for me. I'm not sure about the crop, I'm not sure about what is it here, and that could be done just a little bit more. But either way, Mary, thank you very much for joining us. We really appreciate it. I know it's not easy, but definitely keep on pushing yourself, and make sure you join us again next week or in the upcoming weeks, and we can look at more of your photos. And here we are, and it's time to end this week's review marathon by looking at the last few photographers who sent us really kind of a mix of different photography styles, and they didn't fit in any of the categories we were looking at earlier. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people to look at, so let's jump straight into it and get it out of the way. Starting from the beginning, I'm really sorry for the name, I can't really read it, but Brynhildur, I hope I'm reading it right. Anyway, we have 2 pictures, and before I jump into actual pictures, 2 suggestions for you and for anybody else. Anytime I send or bring my pictures to the review, there's 2 things you need to do. Don't add any frames, any things around it, nothing what could disturb the reviewer. Second thing in, don't use any watermark or text. Several times it happened to me that the person didn't even look at the picture for me. He basically just reject them, and the general idea is that obviously these things immediately take away attention from the first impression of your photo. I look at the picture first, which brings me down is your logo down here, and I'm starting to think about why did he use this text, why white, why what. And the second thing, I'm looking at the frame, I'm thinking what is it made out of, and already my attention is completely away from whatever is happening on the picture. So big suggestion, and for the next time, if you send us more pictures, stay away from frames and any text or watermark or logo. I completely understand why we put them there for your Facebook, website or whatever, but for review, what you want to hear is the review for your photos, not for your watermark, logo or frame. So we have two pictures, obviously a pet photography, very lovely, very cute, although I would prefer them to be centered a little bit more towards here, simply because they're looking towards the other direction. And just as a suggestion, if you like to take a picture of the dogs, I was already mentioning it in a pets part of the review, there is a website which is called Hair of the Dog, and they are absolutely perfect when it comes to pet photography and specifically dog photography. They have great Facebook group which you can join for free and get lots of new knowledge, and most importantly lots of inspiration on how to photograph dogs. But coming back to your photo, obviously we have two lovely dogs. Looking at it from the technical point, they are nice and sharp. The light and exposure seems to be fine, obviously using natural light. Little bit of a shame that we couldn't use different focal point to maybe add a little bit more depth and separation. So let's say the dogs would be in a focus and whatever is at the back could be just a little bit more blurred, not completely because you want to keep some of the details, but just enough so you add more contrast in between. In this case it works because the dogs are obviously white, and as they white they bring the attention immediately to them, so it works quite well. If you would have other color, brown, black, I would suggest you to use the technique of separating your main element with the background by using different focal point and so on. Moving on the next picture, obviously we are somewhere in the mountains. Technically it's done well. You have your foreground, middle ground, and then obviously the thing at the back black. Lighting, when it comes to light, and exposure is fine, but the light is a little bit flat, just a touch. I don't know what time of the day it was. It seems like it was a bit overcast, and where somewhere the overcast worked quite well because it really nicely diffused the shadows. Here it's just kind of a little bit take away the contrast we could get for such a nice harsh environment. Moving on the artistic part, we already talked about it. Composition, it's cute. The dogs are standing, they are your main subject. They could be even more kind of crop onto because obviously they are the main players of this. We could play something like this. They could probably work even on a square crop, just something maybe like this, and still there is enough around them to kind of support the story, so it's very, very lovely. Yeah, I will play with different crop. The subject is there, the dogs are nicely posing. I think you done very well here. Good idea. Just maybe, as I say, try to get yourself inspired by the website I showed you earlier, because you could get more kind of more interesting composition ideas from there. Moving here, I think it's a shame that the horizon isn't straight. So obviously, you know, something like this would be more kind of natural. Then the crop, I would really like to see the raw file for this to see how much more we could get out of it. Again, it's really shame because the frame really kind of tricked my eyes away, so I tried to kind of crop to it to get out of it. It's a lovely scene. I really like these overcasts. What it would really need in your post-processing to add to it some contrast, maybe by some kind of gradient to kind of play around with the eyes and just add more interest to it. But other than that, as a composition, it's lovely. I can imagine it was a lovely scene. Hopefully in the future I can see more kind of more open scene from you. And then post-processing, I think this is perfectly fine. Again, you could work and add some crop vignetting and the kind of basic stuff. You could add some gradients just to kind of create more separation for your main subject, something like this and this, and then maybe do some dodge and burn just to add and create more contrast. You could also play around with the kind of color separation and create some color contrast and so on. Same here, heavy dodge and burn. Also, what you could do, you could turn it to black and white and see if that would do something for us, you know, then create some really bright parts of the picture and just kind of play around with it a little bit like Ansel Adams style. But either way, thank you very much that you joined us, and make sure you send us more pictures so we can go through them and give you more feedback on them. Moving on the next person, Evgeny. I have 3 pictures from you. I will actually just review the 2 because I already touched on macro photography a lot in the other episode, although it's a lovely capture. Again, when it comes to macro photography, I much more prefer when the whole subject is in focus and everything else out of it, because recently lots of photographers just focus on the one thing, and then you have a whole picture with just few inches of something in a focus and that is blurry, and I think it's a shame. But other than that, great. I think your travel or cityscape or landscape photography is great. Technical part, everything is in focus, the light is great. Personally, I would go more for golden hour or sunset sunrise time just to add to it more interest. In this case, it doesn't matter. Actually, you have a lovely clouds there. The exposure is well done, and technically I have nothing to add to it. Let's see if we have some information about what you're shooting with. Pentax, and yeah, ISO 200 handheld with f8, which is perfect for most of the lenses, so very well done there. Moving on to artistic part, I really love what you've done here with the composition. Obviously with the boat, you're leaving some space here. It would be even nicer if she would be sailing somewhere, but I think it's a lovely idea, and it really works for me because it creates nice contrast between the sky and the boat, and it's just lovely in overall. This is very creative and I really like that. This style probably about 7-8 years ago was really popular, with this kind of blue reflecting on the buildings and just the sky, and it was something what just was very popular. It was hanging in many offices I've been in, and it a little bit disappeared, but still it's nicely done. Personally, maybe I would just crop it without this part because I think it's a bit confusing. I'm sure you know what I mean, maybe something like this, just to kind of get really kind of straight focus on the leading lines and everything. The leading lines are really strong, the reflection as well. Your artistic part of the picture is really well done on this one. Post-processing, you could play with a little bit of crop vignetting just to see if you can do something there. You could play with some color contrast, see if maybe something like the selective color effect where you just gonna remove all the colors except one would work here. You could add more contrast, play around with the circular gradients and see if you can do more there. But as it comes to basic edit, everything is fine with the picture. I love how it's straight and it's just well done. Similarly here, nothing to add to it. You could obviously add some vignette just to kind of bring some attention towards the leading line and so on, but in overall it's a lovely photo, well done, and send us more pictures in the future. I think your cityscape stuff is really well done. Only thing is I would be looking at is to see if you can come at different times of the day. Moving on to the next one, Jacob Wilson. Jacob, looking at your photos, I get what you're trying to do, but I have to say that when I look at them for first, and I don't know you, I don't know the story of the photos, they are quite confusing. I don't really know what I'm looking at. I guess this is a Harry Potter castle, but then I don't know what it is. Maybe it's like a wands and you're doing some slow exposure here. So let's see if we can get some. Yeah, 20 seconds. So great idea. And here there is the explosion. I was looking at it several times. I'm wondering if the explosion actually happened or no. I don't see much of a reflection inside of the actual plane. So either it was at this post-processing or not. I can't really say. So either way, you've done very well. Moving on the technical part, here obviously foreground is the magic wands or the light rails, and the background is the castle. And because you did the long exposure, the castle isn't 100% in focus. You can see how some parts of it are just a little bit blurry, so that's a touch of a shame. Exposure, I think is fine. The light is fine. I get it, what you're trying to do. I wonder what tripods you were on, and obviously there must be lots of people around you, so maybe just something to work on next. Also, What I would do personally next time I would take a picture, I would take a one quick snap to make sure that I get details in my trees, and in Photoshop I would just blend them in, because I think it would just look cooler. Moving on, the explosion, I'm actually wowed by this photo. That is my favorite out of the two, just because I really keep coming back to it, because I would be really interested how you made it. I wonder if you could send us a raw file so we can look at it deeper. It's well done. I love how the plane is standing in front of the actual explosion and the other plane flying around. In overall, it's very, very lovely and well done to you. So in post-processing, I can't add much to it here because I think it's just well done. In the first one, yeah, if I would have the picture without the blur, I would add it here, and I would definitely look to see if there is a maybe way how I can add more sharpness to the actual castle. Also, one thing, I think when it comes to the blue sky behind, it's a shame there is not some kind of texture or detail in it. You know, clouds or sun or anything would really add to it even more, as you have the kind of nice warmth and magical feel with the lamps, and then all this space just empty with the blue gradient. But either way, thank you very much for sending them over. Well done to you, and keep joining us. We hope to see more pictures from you. So we have 3 more photographers to go through. First, John Andrew McKenna. John, I look at all your photos and I picked those 4 simply because obviously you are very good at 2 different styles, portrait photography and the kind of travel photography, let's say. So portrait photography is very lovely. When it comes to technical part, you're spot on. You know it just as me that your subjects are well lit, they are sharp, they look natural, and they are well done. Now, I have to say that obviously being surrounded by lots of portrait photographer, the style of portrait photography moved on a little bit since, but that's nothing to say that your photos are wrong. It's just the trend is a little bit somewhere else. That's not to do with makeup or anything, but obviously the use of multiple different lights to create some kind of natural shadows, to work with much more brighter background and so on would be something what would be more trendier now. But in general, I love what you've done here, and it's very, very lovely. Similarly with your travel photos, even with the plane here, I wonder if it was there or if you've done it in post-processing. Either way, it brings my interest, and I think it's very well done. It's nicely saturated here with the boat. What you've done, it's all sharp. So talking technically about the two, the sharp, the exposure is done well, obviously well lit. Just as always, you can say that you could have been there at a different time of the day and maybe get your, you know, like this with kind of big sunset behind it would be epic, but it's not always possible, so I get that. So technically all 4 very well done. Moving on the composition, yeah, little baby here, great. We already talked about a few moments ago the fact that the trend went somewhere else right now, but it's still very well done. The lady just as well. And then those 2, on this one, I would be probably looking for a little bit more space around them. If it was possible or no, I can't say, but maybe just a little bit more space at the back. I'm not a huge fan of very, very tight scenes because I think it kind of suffocates the viewer as well a little bit, but either way, it's a lovely picture. And here, this one is my favorite out of all of them. I think it just really works. The kind of leftover reflection there, although it's a bit blurry, it works really well. The birds, the sky, everything works on this picture. I really like this one. Well done to you. Post-processing, I don't know if I would do much more here, to be honest. Maybe push a little bit the contrast. I would create a copy and try to do something like a selective color effect to see if you can remove all the color and maybe just leave the red and see what it would do, because it's just lovely. You could play around with this picture, do dodge and burn, and just do lots of magic on it. This one is really saturated, and it's on the there's lots of highlights in it and lots of texture, which is just a little bit disturbing in a way that it's too much of it. I think everything we add to the picture, texture, contrast, saturation, is better to add locally, so let's say just on the cars, than everywhere, because you can see your subjects are spot on sharp, but then your clouds are also almost too sharp, you know, and when you look at it, it's almost unnatural. When I'm looking at the cars, I don't expect the clouds to be as sharp as they are. So, you know, a little bit of blur, which can be easily created by something like a gradient, and just kind of working around with it and see if you can just make them a little bit more dreamy. Something like this would really make the whole thing work just a little bit more. But those are just details. In general, it looks all natural, and I think you've done super well here. So well done to that. The portraits I will not judge based on post-processing, because I think they are done very well, and congratulations to you. Make sure you join us in the future. We would really like to see more of your work. And finally, what we have, Michael Blakely. Let's have a look at the two pictures. We have obviously the animal here with the reflection, and then we have Nissan. So let's start with Michael. This is like a wildlife photography. Again, if you have a moment, Michael, make sure that you check out the new documentary from BBC, which you can see on for free on Discover Wildlife. It's called Wildlife Photography Masterclass, 10 episodes. Absolutely brilliant, with great production, and it would give you some motivation on what you can do with your wildlife photography like this. The lion is lovely technical part, all sharp, great light, little bit of a shadow here, but other than that, it's lovely, nicely full on, crop on, and it's a lovely photo, full of details, with technically very nice photo. Moving on the next one, very creative thing. Really shame that it was shared over the Facebook, or if not on Facebook, it's just not much details in it. I think the details kind of went away, and it really is a shame, because we could see more out of it, although the idea is lovely. You see, because of how it was shared, I can't see if it was sharp. The light is fine, the exposure is fine, but next time try to send us the thing through Dropbox or other things, so we can see and do a little bit more. Now, looking at the artistic part, I think the line is great. The subject is clear. It's a clear message. It's very lovely. Obviously, wondering what kind of lens you use and how you took this picture, so we could know more. If it's in a zoo, or if it's in like a safari, but still lovely thing. Clear subjects. Maybe you could do different crops. If we would see the raw file, we could tell you. But other than that, well done. This one, great. You could do different crops. Obviously, again, really tricky for me to say because the quality isn't perfect, but lovely idea, very creative thing, and clear subject, and just something different. I really like that. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. And then post-processing, again, bringing me back to my past, where we used to take pictures like this and make them almost like a fine art, really heavy kind of black and white photo, with strong vignette and strong focus on the face is something what we used to do. So it's just an idea of something to do, just to make it a bit more interesting. But I don't want to take anything away from you, because I think you edited really well, and it's a lovely picture. Similarly here, it's more on a yellow side, in a building, which works quite nicely in a contrast with the blue around, so you've done very well there. And again, if you have a time in the future, send it in a bigger resolution so I can tell you more about it. And finally, I have a final photographer, Nissan. Let's have a look here. So we have 4 pictures from you, and really in overall, Nissan, if I could ask you for a favor and send me your pictures without the kind of text at the bottom, and if you can kind of really have a look at the quality and try to improve the quality, you send them to me, because for me it is really tricky to judge picture like this, where everything is pixelated and out of focus, and also where the attention goes completely away towards text. I think you have some lovely photos like this one with the lovely crop, this one as well with the kind of pain and artistic feel, and finally this one with the great composition. This one, by the way, is a winner for me. I think this one is probably the nicest, coolest picture out of all of them. But if I can ask you to do me a favor and send me your pictures in a better quality without the text on them, so I can really tell you what I think about them. Because if I'm gonna judge this picture and critique it, I'm gonna tell you that first of all, it's completely blur, out of focus, and I think that would be unfair. So take your time, send them over, send less and more thought photos, and I will be really happy and looking forward to seeing them. Guys, anyway, thank you very much for joining us this week. It was great. This is it for us for this week. If you want to find out more about our photography reviews, head to our website cleverphotographer.com and sign up to our newsletter to find out and stay in touch with everything what's coming up to our photography community.